Shoot. What up, man? Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known, a prescription drug program that's supposed to significantly reduce costs for lower income individuals and people of color has failed miserably because of a lack of oversight that have seen hospitals violate the 340B prescription drug pricing program signed into law decades ago. We're going to discuss that with a guest from the Black Women's Health Imperative. But first, some headlines. And as our buddy Power 96 brings out, the HBCU Transformation Project, a coalition of 40 historically Black colleges and universities, on Wednesday announced a $124 million gift from philanthropic funders Blue Meridian Partners to increase enrollment, graduation rates, and employment rates for the school's graduates. Michael Lomax is the president and CEO of UNCF, which is acting as an intermediary overseeing the funding. And he called the donation a vote of confidence in the coalition, which includes public and private schools. He says this very significantly scaled grant from them signals to the community that this is a really good investment to make. So congratulations there. We 124 million HBCUs can use every single cent. Also, this morning, the Pennsylvania fugitive has been captured after 13 days. It's interesting. It happened as soon as we got off the air yesterday. Also, Lauren Boebert was escorted out of a theater in Denver for inappropriate behavior. Anybody surprised? We'll tell you about that. And Kanye West wanted his house's windows and electricity removed to make a retro bomb shelter. At least that's what's alleged in a new lawsuit against him. We'll have some details on that as well this morning, as Kanye being Kanye. Also, speaking of lawsuits, one filed against the Beverly Hills Police Department in California accuses police there of, you guessed it, racially profiling Black drivers. We'll bring you that as well. And Florida teachers and parents are hosting a series of rallies and tours to push back against Governor Ron DeSantis's Black History curriculum change. We'll tell you more about that as well. But first up, in Pennsylvania, the residents there can breathe a sigh of relief after 2 weeks. And shortly after we went off air yesterday and talking about this very topic, our own Austin Cooper texted us with the scoop that escaped murderer Danilo Cavalcante was captured after authorities tracked him down using thermal heat technology from an aircraft before a U.S. Border Patrol tactical unit dog ultimately pinned him down. After almost 2 weeks on the run, the 34-year-old convicted killer who broke out of prison on August 31st was arrested. He was found wearing a Philadelphia Eagles hoodie, and he was transported in a convoy to the Avondale State Police Barracks, where he arrived wrapped in a foil blanket shortly before 9 a.m. A video and photos of a bloodied and apparently worn out Cavalcante being taken back to prison was interesting, because a whole group of law enforcement agencies, as you see there in the video, they put him in the middle of that group, dozens and dozens of officers, and took selfies, took pictures. They were admiring the work that they have done. Shaking my head on that one. Uh, they were celebrating, I guess. The sheriff said that they deserved it. Bivens, he said that shortly after midnight, a burglar alarm went off at a residence within the perimeter where they were searching for Cavalcanti. Um, and that's how they were able to detect him. So there he is. He's back in custody. And now they're saying that they're going to place him in a maximum security lockup. He really got his head handed to him yesterday. As you knew he would. First of all, it's surprising that he came in alive, that they captured him alive. It was a totally sneak attack. They were able to capture him surprisingly anyway. I'm calling it a sneak attack makes it seem like, oh, you shouldn't have done it. Yeah, I mean, they have to use any means necessary to get this guy back in custody. But really interesting that we hear it, as you can see, he's bloodied. Um, you just know that those officers were playing ping pong with the guy, and this is what they do. Um, uh, Power 96, of course. I kind of figured folks would observe that of course, he was captured. Now, how he was captured without being shot or killed, he was armed and dangerous. Not one cop feared for his life. You knew that was going to come up, and authorities knew that was going to come up. Of course not. Well, the good news is that he is back in custody. This guy was convicted in August of killing his girlfriend. The girlfriend's family had been worried, sick with him on the loose because he had vowed that he was going to get them. And now, knowing that he was armed, I'm sure that their anxiety went through the roof. So they also reportedly breathed a huge sigh of relief. They were in tears, tears of joy. Cavalcanti is also, I should say, wanted in connection with a murder in Brazil. Angela Connolly says he's alive. It's the reaction that we understand. Everyone understands. But he made it. He made it, and now I mean, he paid a small price compared to as what Angela and Power 96 was referring to. That if this was somebody who had my skin, we'd be talking about burial plans. In Denver, Colorado, this is what it's come to with politics and these lawmakers, these MAGA uh, extremists. U.S. Representative Lauren Boebert was escorted out of a performance of the Beetlejuice musical in downtown Denver, accused of vaping, singing, recording, and causing a disturbance during the performance. The incident report showed that she and her partner, whoever the individual was she was with, currently unidentified. Um, but the incident report said that the two were asked to leave the city-owned theater during the performance. You can't take pictures of a performance. They know that. Um, Vaping is the same as smoking inside the theater. They know they can't do that, yet they were doing it. And of course, she threw the proverbial "Don't you know who I am" card, and she says, I'm gonna call the mayor." And one of the ushers there said, "I'll give you his number." I mean, give me a break. This is maybe it's social media, maybe it's I don't know, but at their worst, we never used to hear. At least I don't recall hearing about lawmakers doing stuff like this, and certainly publicly, and being humiliated. She comes out of there, she's throwing up the middle finger at the folks there. This is how your elected officials carry on. Angela Collins says drunkenness. Uh, she may have been. And she said that's her grandma's word, drunkenness. But this again, it underscores, in all seriousness, underscores the peril. of um, today's political spectrum. There was a poll uh, that is going to be released next week. We got a sneak preview. Can't say a whole lot about it because it is um, they really want it embargoed. So, but a poll will really shed some more light, and we'll talk about it next week on how people feel about politicians in general, including the president, the vice president, um, Mitch McConnell, the Senate. And Mitch McConnell, by the way, there is a new release showing that he was warned on January 2nd about what was going to happen on January 6th, 2021. So it's just, it is not a good look for an elected official. But Marjorie, yeah, she's the same. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the same. This is bad as Lauren Boebert. It's coin flip to see who's worse. But Lauren Boebert really, it should be a complete embarrassment to the institution of Congress, and there should be some repercussions for behavior. The same thing if it was a president, if it was a senator, it doesn't matter. A mayor, you have, it's like police officers are expected, although many fall well short of this, are expected to lead by example in their behavior. It absolutely ticks me off when I see a police car, nothing to do, not on an emergency, just cruising, just cruise through the red light, blow through a stop sign, double parked. And anyway, that's the world we live in. And what world does Kanye or Ye or whatever you want to call him live in? Former project manager and property caretaker for Kanye's um, home said Ye fired him after he refused to remove all the windows and electricity from his Malibu home. Kanye didn't want any electricity. He didn't want any windows. So when Kanye allegedly insisted that Tony Saxon move large generators into the home, Jackson refused, and Kanye ordered him to, quote, get the hell out, and told him he would be considered, quote, an enemy if he did not comply. According to the complaint, um, it says, quote, when plaintiffs refuse to engage in unlawful conduct or to engage in activity that would further cause him physical injury, Mr. Ye responded, quote, if you don't do what I say, you're not going to work for me. I'm not going to be your friend anymore. And you'll just see me on TV. Saxon, who worked for Kanye for roughly 2 months, alleged that Kanye promised to pay him $20,000 per week, but made only two payments, one to cover Saxon's weekly salary and another for the project's budget. The lawsuit also alleges that there were violations of multiple labor codes, including dangerous working conditions, unpaid wages, and wrongful retaliatory termination. Saxon says Kanye's vision for the beach house, which he reportedly bought in September 2021 in an off-market deal, was to make the home like, quote, a bomb shelter from the 1910s by demolishing the custom marble bathrooms, removing the custom windows, plumbing, and electricity, and replacing the stairs with slides. He says we were going to be gutting all of that out and sort of building him a bat cave where he said he could hide from the Clintons and the Kardashians. He says uh, Kanye wanted to make an, quote, art project, not a place to live. As we progress, it's becoming clear that no, he wants to live in here. But Kanye wanted no electricity. He only wanted plants. He only wanted candles. He only wanted battery lights, and he just wanted to have everything open and dark. Saxon goes on to say, you can't keep food in that house because you had no refrigerator. You had no windows. I had seagulls flying in. He said, Kanye said, Kanye didn't want to be a quote slave to modern conveniences, Saxon said, nor did he want to be accessible to the government. He wants to be on a privatized Wi Fi network. He wants to have an alternate source of energy. He wants to have no doors, no windows, no fixtures, just concrete. It's grief. Power 96 says, Ye needs an intervention. The Kardashian curse is real. Quinn, Quinn, Quinn says, I want a bat cave. Wow. I can't, you just can't settle for a man cave. Got to be a bat cave, huh? Hmm. And Andrew Connolly says, when you love something more than yourself, that becomes your God. It's his own fault that he's that way. It appears. I don't know Kanye, never met Kanye, but from all that has been demonstrated, uh, I think Power 96 is right. Some sort of intervention. I do wonder, have there been even attempts? I mean, we hear about friends and others, but have does he have real friends? Does Kanye West have real friends? Austin invites Kanye to go live on the moon. No one will care. This is what Austin Cooper writes in. Bobby, even Bobby Henry's chiming in on that one. Bobby Henry says he wants to be a slave to stupidity. I, you know, he lost his mother. We all know the story. Unfortunately, he lost his mother unexpectedly, and by many accounts, he just really lost everything else, his faculties. And this is a huge. Kanye was a huge money maker. Um, wow. And Salim Salima, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, says that that's the problem. He doesn't have real friends. I like Kanye. He's brilliant. And that's what you keep hearing about Kanye is how brilliant he is. Other artists and other people in the fashion industry as well, which I don't see that on the fashion side at all. I mean, I don't really listen to his music either, but that's the one word that continues to be associated with Kanye West is the word brilliant. He tells the truth and exposes the corruption, according to Miss Salima. Um, yeah, I just it just appears again. I don't know Kanye, but it appears that some sort of intervention is necessary. But again, I think it goes back to the real problem. I don't think the young man has any friends, and maybe that's just it. Maybe his best friend, maybe his friend, his real friend, his mom. Unfortunately, is not here anymore. Maybe that was his real friend. Um, and the Mike V, I agree with this, and I'm not, and I don't know that Mike V is either. I'm not diagnosing Kanye, but Mike V says we need to have an honest conversation about Black folk and autism spectrum disorder. Black folks and mental health. I think things have improved as far as the discussion around it, but I think it could get a whole lot better and it could be more. And so perhaps that is something, well, not perhaps, it is something that everyone should consider. I think the powers that be should consider. He says, Power 96, I wouldn't even look at a Kardashian in public. I would throw holy water on them and keep it moving. Oh, gosh. In Beverly Hills, folks, a lawsuit accuses the police there of racially profiling nearly 1,100 Black people during traffic stops. The suit was filed on behalf of most of the Black drivers who were pulled over in the wealthy city between August 2019 and August 2021. Out of a total of 1,088 Black motorists stopped, only 2 were convicted of crimes. Attorney Ben Crump said at a news conference, and this is serious. They got the Black Attorney General on the case. But that's a stunning number. It's not only a stunning number, but it's something to really that it's an eye opener when you're talking about going before a judge and a jury in a civil suit. 1,088 black motorists were stopped in Beverly Hills. Only two were found to have done something wrong, to have warranted that stop. Only two. That means over 99% of the stops were not justified. About a third of all arrests made during that 2-year period also involve blacks who make up only 1.5% of Beverly Hills' population. Crump said it wasn't to deter crime, it was to send a message to black people that we don't want your kind around here. He goes on to say that this is racial profiling 101. City denied the allegations, of course, saying that in a statement, the stats presented referencing the number of convictions is a mischaracterization of the evidence in the case. In addition, the 10, I want to say 1,100, but it's 1,088 arrests reference includes people cited and released, not just custodial arrests. The city of Beverly Hills is an international destination that always welcomes visitors from across the country and around the world. They said that the role of the police is to enforce the law regardless of race. Yeah, but even that own statement right there, right? Where the city says, in addition, the 1,088 arrests reference includes people cited and released. Yeah, that's what he's saying. That's what Ben Crump is saying. 1,088 and only two were found to have done something wrong. And sometimes people say things that further buries them, right? Um, But this is Beverly Hills. If you've been to Beverly Hills, if you ever gone to Rodeo Drive, if you wanna, if you're black or brown and you wanna go into those shops, you're highly, highly scrutinized. You might remember some years ago, Oprah Winfrey, went into a store. This is not only happened to Oprah, either as far as celebrities are concerned, but she went into a store, she looked at some lady didn't know who Oprah was at the time, looked at some handbags, very expensive handbags, couple of thousand. And woman told her, "You might want to shop somewhere else. I don't think you'd be interested in these products." And Oprah asked her why. She says, "Well, Miss, they're quite expensive." And Oprah pulled okay, let me show you better than I can tell you. She went to another store and bought thousands of dollars worth of handbags. And the one thing I'm proud of her about is she flaunted it to that store, showed that store. Excuse me. And then they found out later that this was Oprah Winfrey, and I believe the store manager who carried on was fired. But the suit in Beverly Hills that was filed by Ben Crump seeks a $500 million in damages, and one of the victims was a law clerk named Shepard York, um, pulled over for having an expired license plate as he was driving to work. He says, "I spent 3 days in jail, humiliated, scared, sad." His car was searched and impounded, but he was never convicted of a crime. Hmm. Mike V says MIT also has a report out about black folks being 80% of the traffic stops in Boston, a city that prides itself on being progressive. Yeah, Boston has a black mayor now, and um, same thing. It's the same old song. What's his name? Let's sing. Shock G says it's the same old song. In Florida, after Governor Ron DeSantis pulled all his stunts and continues to roil up trouble down there, particularly for African Americans. DeSantis said yesterday he called the NAACP's uh, their caution, their travel advisory, a stunt. But after he and the education department rolled out a controversial updated curriculum regarding Black history lessons, many students, parents, and educators and elected officials, I should say, raised their voices over how slavery was being presented. The new curriculum included instructions for middle school students that, quote, slaves developed skills which in some instances can be applied for their personal benefit. That's mean, Marvin Dunn, a professor of at Florida International said. He said that's mean to say that to black people that there was some advantage, some positive benefit to being enslaved. They weren't even considered to be persons. So how could they have personal benefits? Dunn and other educators have banded together with parents and students and formed a nonprofit coalition, the Miami Center for Racial Justice, to protest Florida's new curriculum and raise awareness for the Black history that they say is being erased from classrooms throughout the state. The group has held rallies and teaching tours at Florida's at the historical sites in Florida, I should say, to counter some of the misconceptions that they said are now being taught. One of the tours was in Rosewood, where a black community, as most of us know, once prospered until a white mob destroyed it in 1923. DeSantis, of course, has defended the curriculum while campaigning for president, particularly the notion that slavery benefited black Americans. He says, quote, they're probably going to show that some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into things later in life. This guy, that's of course, he went on Fox News contending that the curriculum's wording let teachers show, quote, how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied to their person. It's come on. Have we had enough of Ron DeSantis yet? Power 96 says Boston is Mississippi-ish. And he says that I told the Florida Education Board yesterday they can't celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month because according to them, that is CRT. He said they hung up the phone on him. Yeah, that's the response that we all could have been expecting, Power 96, I'm sure. It is unreal what's taking place in all of those southern states, pretty much. Mike V says they have an Asian mayor in Boston. Didn't they elect a black mayor not long ago, I thought, or at least appointed a black mayor? Nonetheless, that's where we at. Well, Congress created the 340B prescription drug pricing program in 1992 in order to help safety net hospitals get prescription medications at a big price discount. The average discount is 59% off the list price. The 340B program is entirely funded by the pharmaceutical manufacturers. The intention of the program is for these safety net hospitals to use the savings from the 340B program in order to better serve their patients, many of whom live in poverty or near poverty. Well, what is happening more and more is that hospitals participating in the 340B program, they don't use the savings to help the patients as stated in the law. In fact, the patients and their insurance companies, including Medicaid, are charged full price for these drugs. That means the hospital is making a profit and they can buy a drug at the low 340B price and then charge a patient or their insurer or Medicaid for the full cost of that same drug. Oddly enough, there is currently no real accountability on what they're doing with the difference. The hospitals make a lot of money off the difference. And if there is no accountability, it ultimately goes to the bottom line instead of patients in our communities. We are discussing that this morning. We actually, I'm seeing a note. Actually, in a pre-recorded interview, we spoke with an executive from the Black Women's Health Imperative. The Black Women's Health Imperative in serving communities, especially, of course, those disproportionately affected by healthcare disparities.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So BWHI, which is celebrating our 40th anniversary this year, was founded to support promote, uplift, and hold in high regard the health equity needs for Black women and girls and their families. And so what that means is that we are an organization that's committed to the policies, the practices, the interventions, and the science that support how Black women should have not just equal healthcare access and health outcomes, but equitable across the scope of what it means to be a woman in the United States, and that our health should not be considered lower than or less than anybody else's health in the United States. So we focus on areas such as HIV, reproductive justice, maternal child health, which we know in this country is at its worst in terms of the US being at its worst around maternal child health outcomes. Chronic diseases, diabetes and obesity are really big ones in our work as well. So the 340B pharmacy program is in a direct alignment with the work that we support, because we believe that all communities should have adequate access to the medications and the pharmaceuticals that are going to support their health outcomes. And that's what that pharmacy program is meant to do, is to ensure that expensive drugs, that all drugs, that any sort of health supports around pharmacies can be supported and given back to Black and Brown communities, in particular Black women.
Dr. Ife, can you share some specific examples of how the 340B program has made a tangible difference in the lives of individuals with the communities that the Black Women's Health Imperative serve?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, one of the really clear case studies that we have around how 340B pharmacy pricing really works well is in the realm of the HIV programming. And so a lot of for example, there are a lot of community-based health centers and or private health centers as well that have used the discounts from the cost of HIV medications and the other medications that patients need to actually house in-house clinical pharmacies within their hospital clinics, so that along the continuum of care, you have patients that can come in, see their providers, access their health care, but also not have to actually go someplace else to another pharmacy to actually pick up their meds. They can actually right there inside the clinic pick up their medications on site. And so having that circular approach in terms of access to care really lessens the burden on patients to be able to harness their ability to have a full wide range of spectrum of care at their fingertips.
So this is it's a really outstanding program when it works.
When it works. When it works. And in the HIV world, we do have some significant examples of it working, but we also know that there are places where it's not working and it's not being monitored very well by the federal government. Look, it's been around for 30 years, and you know, the average discount.
Not many people know that.
A lot of people know that this regulation has been in place for 30 years, and not many people know that from the consumer level. There are a lot of community-based health clinics that don't know that it exists, but who does know that it exists are hospital systems, and who does know that it exists are the pharmacies who are trying, pharmaceutical companies and pharmacies who are trying to use this for the benefit of patients. And so, one, we need to do a lot more advocacy in the space of educating that using this drug pricing program is an available resource for communities to lessen the burden around drug costs, for sure.
And how do we do that? How do we let them know, Dr. Ife?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, BWHI would love to partner with relevant stakeholders and continue to hold these conversations. We partnered with a forum with Al Sharpton some time ago, and the U.S. Senate has created a bipartisan working group to focus on 340B disparities. We're very excited to work in that space with other Senate officers. We would like to be a part of those conversations and offer up viable solutions in those areas and with our constituents. The Biden administration really has a lot of discretion on how to make changes to the 340B program and how it works. And as we know, Biden has recently released his focus around drug pricing as a major focus for healthcare access. And so we really want to be in conversation with how we set up or rethink or reimagine how 340B was supposed to work, what the intention of it was, how do we put regulations around it so that it's being used in the way that it was intended, how do we have specific outcomes that hospitals have to abide by and that hospital systems have to abide by in support of addressing health equity in their local communities. And so we want to be able to partner with various organizations to do that work.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing too, even in what you're saying, Dr. Ife, is there's really no oversight. This is a law that was passed, you said 30 plus years ago, but there's been really no oversight. How is that being addressed, if at all, right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, you're right. There hasn't been a whole lot of oversight, and this is not an unheard of thing. There are a lot of regulations that don't necessarily
Unfortunately.
unfortunately get looked at very clearly in our functioning system as it is. But that said, because I think a couple of things. Because it's older, so again, it's been around for a long time, and because of the lack of awareness, and because the oversight regulations were not very specific to what the specific outcomes that needed to happen with the reduction in the fees, right? And so the oversight needs to be linked to very specific with the drug reductions, the funding that is going to
Hmm.
be aid from this. This is what you must do with it, and here's a framework for thinking about what needs to happen with it. And I think going back to create some of that framework and then being really clear about what that should look like, and having community voices, policy voices, voices like BWHI and our constituents be a part of what those expectations are is one way to go about making sure that oversight is in place.
And as far as BWHI, what are some of the give us some more recommendations, if you will, that you might offer to Congress for maximizing the impact of the 340B program?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for us, again, going back to our mission of health equity for Black women, for us, that means addressing the biggest health crises that are impacting health women. We know maternal child health is a big one. Another big one that folks need to be aware of is this concept of service deserts, and how, in particular areas of the South, in particular, where there are, people have to travel 150, 200 miles to get to their nearest healthcare or hospital systems. And so addressing sort of some of those service delivery gaps is one way to think about using the benefit of the margins from things like 340B pharmacy pricing. Um, and, our perspective is that we need to work closely with hospital systems, care systems, to look at what those issues look like in their prospective communities. A lot of it is documented. We know that there's crises amongst chronic disease issues. We know that there's a maternal child health crisis. We know that there are 1 million women in the United States, Black women, living with HIV. And so we have enough data. So how do we actually use that data to form recommendations to address some of those health issues is a big one for us. And we want to partner with systems to be able to do that.
Um, Congress apparently has to investigate these things further, because there are other discounted medicines that are not reaching the right people. It seems like they must do a thorough investigation. I know that there are some bills that the Michigan congressman has proposed, put forth, and I know that certain measures need to be taken place, really. But what steps, with that in mind, can government is one thing, but what about the community healthcare organizations, community organizations like BWHI? What other steps might you be able to take?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a number one step for us is, again, to just reiterate to our constituents, to our partners that we work with. We work with a number of Black-led organizations that are really in the zone around addressing Black health, the Council on Black Health, NAACP, Delta Sigma Theta. There's a lot of organizations that we are in partnership with. So I think it's, again, lifting up this idea that folks need to know that this exists, and also to get that bipartisan U.S. Senate Working Committee back on track. I think that's a big push that we need to be making. If that Senate Working Committee can get back on track, meeting regularly, engaging with us as constituents and other constituents, and partnering with us to make these recommendations on how the regulations should be implemented, and then how do we monitor them? I think those are the big key steps then that we could start to move on with regards to this issue.
Yeah, you mentioned bipartisan. That generally, right, is the
That's
fast track way of getting things done, right?
That's the gold standard, and we already have that support. We know that across the aisle, congressmen across the aisle believe that this is an important issue, and so let's start to engage in that space and get those congresspeople back in agreement and having conversations regularly about this issue.
Yeah, because the real issue seems to be, again, we talked about this, just the oversight and making sure that hospitals and everybody else do what they're supposed to do. Because it seems like the 340B is there, the regulation, the law is there, right? It's just making sure that it's done properly.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it is that it exists. It is a good program. It is a program that had the intent of having good outcomes related to it. So now we just need to make sure we get it back into alignment and work on that working group. As you can hear my kid in the background.
Well, Dr. Ife, you mentioned already too that the Biden administration has the authority to make changes, right? But Congress probably needs to kind of light a fire under the administration. Is that right?
Yep, we agree. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, light a fire in a way that brings in the accountability into our healthcare systems. And so again, working to address the gaps between how the regulation is being used, where the benefit of the regulation is being held, and how hospital systems and corporate structures are not sort of addressing the communities that need access to this, rather than addressing what their bottom lines are. And so I think that's a big issue as well in terms of lighting the fire around those regulations, that the outcome of this is to communities, not to corporate structures.
Yeah. And of course, we're the Black press of America. So, our primary audience is African Americans. So tell us, really, this 340B plan, how beneficial, if everything works well, if everything goes according to plan, how beneficial would it be, particularly for African Americans?
It's a great question. I mean, the average discount that the 340B pricing would allow would be up to 59-60% off drug-related costs, right? And so if you think about the expense of pharmaceuticals for certain disease areas, everything from cardiovascular disease to there's a lot of work that's being done in the obesity space, and we can talk about what that means, and have some decision-making points around that. But 59% off your drug medications is a huge benefit. And for communities who are either low income, underinsured, not insured, I mean, you can't even argue that that wouldn't be of substantial benefit to folks that need to be able to access life-saving medications. And so that's huge. So that's at a direct individual level, but at a structural level, just being able to hold harness to having wider ranges of service times, service delivery times, longer hours in clinical settings, transportation availability, all of the ways that the discounts can be used and moved to support health equity and to support opening up access to communities. There's so many ways to think about that if we put some regulations and some thought onto that. So there's so many ways that it can be of importance to Black communities for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned huge discounts. I know that earlier this year, the Biden administration talked about the insulin and getting those costs down. There are people paying, taking shots for Humira, for instance.
Hmm.
You're talking about $2,000 per shot. If you're taking that, say, once a week, that's $8,000 a month.
That's it. That's
And
it.
so so that something like that falls under, right, the 340B program, the drug pricing program.
It could. I mean, definitely for sure. If those are medications that are being um, produced and manufactured by pharmaceuticals that are participating in that, yes, it could. And yes, those are huge ones, right? Insulin is a huge one that's happening, and there, as we know right now, there are huge sort of supply chain issues in that space as well. And so there's just so much interesting work that could come out of this opportunity to really regulate and hold harness to this. And we want to be a part of the conversation with our policy members and our stakeholders to ensure that folks are educated about it, that our people are educated about it, and that we can start, as you say, lighting the fire to make sure that it's used in the proper way.
Yeah, and finally, before we let you go, again, the Black Women's Health Imperative, have you guys have been out front on this and so many other
Yeah.
issues, but this issue in particular, the 340B drug pricing program. Just before you go, just again break down for us maybe two, three of the biggest challenges that you have, and trying to get the listening ears that you need,
Yeah.
and also the again once again underscore the benefits of this.
Yeah. Um, here's what the huge opportunity is to fix this, is that there's an opportunity to address the sort of lack of transparency in the use of the program. Um, that despite being 30 years old, 340B entities are not required to calculate or report on the amount of revenue they receive, nor are they required to reinvest that revenue. And so if we just to deal with those two issues just there, what then that alone will open up a door to not just a conversation about what's going on, but then how to
Hmm.
fix it, right? So I think
Right.
that's like sort of the greatest challenges that we're seeing in this, and that's why that's
But and I'm sorry to cut you, but for lawmakers, that seems common sense, right? The
yeah.
easy fix.
Yeah, and that's why we really want to push that bipartisan working group to actually look at those specific issues and then develop the solutions around them. Yes, correct.
Wow, wow. Listen, we appreciate the work that you guys do at the Black Women's Health Imperative, and certainly appreciate the work that you're doing on this issue. Wish more folks, and we're going to try and make sure that more folks know about this, because this is some things that kind of fly under the radar with all the other chaos that goes on in this world, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's really important. And these are policies and provisions that are meant to address those issues around health equity for all Americans, for Black women, for our families. And so we have to stay on top of monitoring them and seeing them through. So I appreciate that for sure.
Absolutely, Dr. Ife. She is with the Black Women's Health Imperative website. Whatever you want to tell them before we close out.
Our website is bwhi.org, Black Women's Health Imperative. And this year is our 40th anniversary. So please check out our website and check out the fun activities that we have to talk about the state of Black women in the United States.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining the Black Press of America. And particularly, thank you so much for joining Let It Be Known.
Thank you for having me.
So there you have it, this 343 program. You guys can look it up. and check it out. There's some legislation going on to strengthen it and to do more with it. We did. Bobby Henry asked about that came up about an advertising campaign, but that's something that, of course, the powers that be will have to pick up on that. We got to steer clear of certain things, but the door is open, Bobby. We mentioned that. But folks, it's a serious issue. Check out more on the 340B issue and find out how you can support the Black Women's Imperative on pushing to enact some protections on 340B, because that's it's a lot of people are suffering under the high cost. We saw earlier this year the Biden administration cap was able to work with some companies and cap the cost of insulin at $35. We see some efforts by these organizations, lots of efforts by some of these organizations like the Black Women's Health Imperative. So continue to keep an eye on that, because it affects, again, we say this term a lot. It disproportionately affects African Americans. So check it out. And tomorrow we're going to have in addition to the news, we're going to have a little fun tomorrow. We got a couple of special guests, authors and podcasters who are going to join us. We're going to talk about Black vernacular. Yeah. Black vernacular. It should be a lot of fun. You should join us. Tell your friends to join us. Tell your mama to join us, because a lot of that came from your mama and your grandmama. So check us out tomorrow on Let It Be Known. We'll see you then.